Commander Zefix of the Galactic Wildlife Conservation Fleet had seen a lot of stupid things in his 30-year career, but humans took the trophy, mounted it on their wall, and then probably tried to befriend whatever deadly creature they had hunted to get it. Today's assignment seemed simple enough. Some colonist named Anya Barrett had been reported for, quote, illegal exotic predator housing, end quote. Probably another one of those Earth idiots who thought they could keep a Thornveld spike hound as a pet because, oh look, it has fur, how cute, completely ignoring the fact that spike hounds dissolved their prey from the inside out with acidic saliva. Zefix had the arrest warrant loaded on his datapad, the stun restraints charged on his belt, and absolutely zero patience for whatever nonsense excuse this human would offer. They always had excuses. But officer, I didn't know the plasma serpent was venomous. Yes, you did, Karen. It is literally called a plasma serpent. What part of that name suggested friendly? He approached the habitat pod. A standard colonial structure, decent condition, solar panels functioning. Perimeter fence intact. Normal, boring. Exactly the kind of place where humans did abnormal, non-boring things that violated 17 different galactic safety codes. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Why would you lock your door when you were illegally housing a dangerous predator? That would just be, oh, I don't know, common sense. Zefix entered slowly, weapon drawn but not activated, scanner sweeping the main room. Kitchen area, clean. Living space, organized. No immediate signs of hold on. What was that smell? His nostril slits flared. Raw meat, fresh, a lot of it. He moved toward the back of the habitat, where the sleeping quarters would be located, and that was when he heard it. A sound that made his 3 hearts skip in sequence like a broken timing belt. Tiny roars, plural, coming from the bedroom. No. It could not be what his brain was suggesting. His brain was wrong. His brain was having a malfunction due to stress and poor sleep. He would open that door, and there would be a completely reasonable explanation, like a malfunctioning audio entertainment system playing nature documentaries at high volume. Zefix pushed the door open with the barrel of his weapon, staying behind the reinforced frame, and peered inside. Anya Barrett, human female, approximately 30 standard years, was asleep in her bed, peaceful, comfortable, one arm draped over the side of the mattress, breathing slow and steady like someone without a care in the entire galaxy. Not her pillow curled up against her head like some kind of stuffed toys were 3 juvenile Thornveld Razorbacks. Zefix stopped breathing. Just stopped. Forgot how. The biological process became completely optional in that moment. Razorbacks. Thornveld. Razorbacks. The apex predator of this entire planet. The species with retractable claws that could punch through starship plating. The animals whose bone armor was so dense it refracted energy weapons. The creatures that the Galactic Conservation Database listed as do not approach under any circumstances, lethal force pre-authorized. Are you seriously reading this? Run, you idiot. 3 of them. Babies, yes, but still easily 40, 50 pounds each. Covered in the early stages of their signature bone plating, dark gray with streaks of deep crimson. Their claws were visible, retracted but present, gleaming in the morning light filtering through the window, and they were making noises. Soft, rumbling growls that rose and fell in pitch. Their little heads bobbed and weaved. One of them gently pawed at the human's hair. Another was, oh ancestors preserve him, it was nuzzling her ear. Zefix's weapon arm remained extended, but his hand was shaking so badly the targeting laser was drawing figure 8s on the opposite wall. His brain supplied a helpful biological fact: Razorback cubs stayed with their mother until they were fully grown at 2 years old. They learned to hunt during this time. They practiced on anything that moved. This human was very much moving, well, breathing. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, a perfectly good practice target. The cubs were not practicing. They were reporting. Yes, that was the behavior pattern. Zefix had studied Razorback pack dynamics during his xenobiology certification. Cubs would return from patrol and report to the pack leader through a series of vocalizations and physical gestures, demonstrating what they had found, what threats they had assessed, waiting for approval or correction. These 3 were giving a morning report to their pack leader. Who was this unconscious human woman who had apparently somehow convinced 3 apex predators that she was their mother? Zefix was pressed against the doorframe now, weapon still aimed at nothing useful because what exactly was he going to shoot? The human? The cubs? His own foot to make sure he was not hallucinating. One of the cubs, the smallest one with a distinctive white patch on its nose, turned its head and looked directly at him, made eye contact, held it. Zephyx had been trained for first contact scenarios, hostile boarding actions, containment breaches, and rogue AI uprisings. None of his training covered what to do when a baby murder machine stared at you while cuddling with a human. The cub chirped. An actual chirp, like a bird. A very large, very armored, very deadly bird. Then it went back to nuzzling the human's shoulder, continuing its morning report with its siblings. Zephyx realized he had been holding his breath for 45 seconds. He exhaled slowly, quietly, because making loud noises near Razorbacks was on the official list of last things people did before dying horribly. He tapped his communicator with his free hand, keeping his eyes on the bed, and whispered into it with all the calm professionalism he could gather, which was approximately none. Dispatch. This is Commander Zephyx. I need backup, and possibly a xenopsychologist. And maybe a priest. Several priests. From different religions. Just send everyone. On the bed, Anya Barrett continued sleeping, completely unaware that she was one unexpected sneeze away from being the galaxy's most absurd statistic. Anya Barrett woke up the way most people did, slowly and with significant resentment toward the concept of morning. She stretched, yawned wide enough to dislocate her jaw, and scratched absently at her hair, which had achieved what scientists would call chaotic nest configuration. Then she noticed the armed alien pressed against her bedroom wall like he was trying to phase through it into another dimension. "Oh, morning," she said, voice rough with sleep. "You are here early. Is this about the fence permit? Because I filed that extension request last week." Zephyx made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and a strangled cough. His weapon was still pointed vaguely in her direction, though his aim had gotten worse, probably due to the violent trembling. He managed, gesturing with his free hand toward her pillow. Anya turned her head and smiled at the three cubs, who were now fully awake and vibrating with morning energy. "Oh hey babies. Good morning patrol report, was it? You checked the perimeter? Any breaches?" She reached up and scratched Scout, the one with the white nose patch right behind his developing ear armor. The spot that was, according to every xenobiological database in the galaxy, a trigger point that would cause Razorbacks to enter an immediate attack frenzy. Scout leaned into the scratch, eyes closing, and made a sound that could only be described as a purr crossed with a cement mixer. You are. Your hand is." Zephyx tried again, his translator apparently giving up on forming complete sentences. "What?" Anya looked at her hand, then at Scout, then back at Zephyx. "Oh, yeah, no. They are totally fine. Found these guys about 3 months back. Mom got caught in a boulder slide up in the northern ridge. Terrible accident. She was already gone when I got there. But these three were trying to dig her out, making the saddest sounds you have ever heard." She swung her legs out of bed, and the cubs immediately tumbled off the pillow in a cascade of claws and armor plating, scrambling to follow her. Brick, the stockiest of the three, got tangled in the blanket and rolled twice before righting himself with an indignant snort. "So I brought them home." Anya continued, walking past Zephyx toward the kitchen area. He flattened himself even harder against the wall, which should not have been physically possible. "I mean, what was I supposed to do? Leave them there to starve? They were babies." "Babies," Zephyx repeated, finally finding his voice. Those are Thornveld Razorbacks. Apex predators. Class 5 extinction-level threats. They cannot. Every study ever conducted proves they are incapable of bonding with any species outside their own pack structure. They are biologically programmed to attack anything that is not a Razorback. "Huh," Anya said, opening her cooling unit and pulling out a large container of raw meat. "Somebody should probably update those studies then." She dumped the meat onto 3 separate plates, her movements casual and practiced. The cubs lined up, sitting on their haunches, waiting. Actually waiting. Their eyes tracked the food with intense focus, but none of them lunged or attacked. "Scout, Brick, Pepper, breakfast," Anya announced, setting the plates down. The cubs descended on their food with enthusiasm that bordered on violence, but stayed at their respective plates. No fighting, no resource guarding, just 3 baby apex predators having breakfast like domesticated animals. Zephyx had his scanner out now, recording everything, because he was going to need evidence. He was going to need so much evidence. His supervisor was going to watch this footage and accuse him of fabricating it with special effects. I do not. This is not how, he said, which was really the only response available to his brain at the moment. Anya leaned against her counter, watching the cubs eat with obvious affection. They are smart, really smart, smarter than people give them credit for. I just treated them like individuals, you know? Set boundaries, consistent routine, positive reinforcement. Same stuff I did with military working dogs back on Earth. You trained apex predators, using dog training protocols. Zephyx felt his left eye begin to twitch, which it only did during extreme stress or when his mother visited. Well, yeah, I mean pack dynamics are pack dynamics, right? They needed a leader after their mom died. I just stepped in. Pepper, the smallest and fastest of the three, finished her breakfast first and bounded over to Anya, sitting at her feet and looking up with an expression that was probably meant to be intimidating, but came across as hopeful. No seconds, you little garbage disposal. You will get chunky, and then you will not be able to run as fast, Anya said firmly. Pepper made a disgruntled chirping sound but did not argue, just accepted the boundary and wandered over to where Scout and Brick were still eating, attempting to steal from Brick's plate instead. Brick swatted at her with one paw, claws retracted, in what was clearly a sibling squabble rather than actual aggression. They began wrestling, rolling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and armor plating and tiny roars. Anya watched them for a moment, then walked over and stepped directly into the wrestling match. Both cubs froze immediately, looking up at her. Gentle, she said, tapping Brick on the nose. We do not bite our siblings for real. Play only. Brick chirped in acknowledgement. Pepper chirped back. They resumed wrestling, but noticeably softer, with more performance than actual violence. One of them, Scout, broke away from watching his siblings and padded over to Anya's ankles, where he opened his mouth and gently, so gently it would have been invisible on security footage, pressed his teeth against her skin. Practice biting. Testing pressure. Learning control. Good bite inhibition, Scout. Very good. That is exactly the right pressure. Anya praised, reaching down to pat his armored head. Zephyx was going to need therapy. Expensive therapy. Possibly experimental therapy that had not been invented yet. His scanner was recording everything, documenting the impossible, and he knew with absolute certainty that when he filed this report he would be drug tested, multiple times, by medical professionals who doubted his sanity. So, Anya said brightly, looking over at him, with the kind of smile that suggested she did not fully grasp the cosmic horror of her situation. You mentioned something about a permit. Zephyx had given up on the permit conversation approximately 30 seconds after Anya started explaining her daily routine with the kids, which is what she called the 3 living weapons currently using her kitchen floor as a wrestling arena. So after breakfast we do chores, Anya said, pulling on a work jacket that had seen better decades. They like to help. Help, Zephyx repeated flatly. They like to help. Yeah. They get bored otherwise, and bored cubs are destructive cubs. Trust me, I learned that lesson the expensive way. Rest in peace, my good couch. She grabbed a toolbox from under her counter, and before she could even stand up fully, Scout had padded over and gently, impossibly gently, taken the handle in his jaws. His teeth, each one roughly the size of Zephyx's thumb and categorized by xenobiologists as capable of piercing reinforced combat armor, closed around the metal with all the delicate precision of a surgical instrument. Scout carried the toolbox over to the door and set it down without so much as a scratch on the handle. Good boy, Scout. Thank you for helping, Anya said. And Scout's entire body wiggled with pride. His tail, which was developing the characteristic blade-like ridges of adult Razorbacks, wagged back and forth like a dog, a 300-pound dog. With weapons-grade biology, Zephyx's scanner was working overtime. The data it was collecting was going to be classified as either groundbreaking or complete fiction. No middle ground. Anya walked through her habitat doing a routine inspection, and the cubs followed in a loose formation around her, occasionally breaking off to investigate corners or sniff at vents. Every few minutes one of them would chirp at her, and she would look at whatever they were indicating. What are they doing? Zephyx asked, following at what he considered a safe distance, which was as far away as possible while still being in the same structure. Morning safety check. They are really good at finding problems. Way better than my automated sensors, honestly. As if on cue, all 3 cubs suddenly stopped in the hallway, lined up in front of a section of wall and began chirping in unison. Not the soft chirps from earlier. These were sharp, insistent repeating. Anya walked over immediately, running her hand along the wall. What did you find, guys? Brick pawed at a spot about 3 feet up. Anya leaned in close, squinting, then pulled out a handheld scanner from her pocket. Her expression shifted from curious to concerned. Oh, that is not good. That is a stress fracture. How did you 3 even detect that? It is barely visible. She turned to look at the cubs, who were sitting in a neat row, watching her expectantly. Excellent work. All 3 of you. A+ threat detection. You probably just saved us from a hull breach. The cubs vibrated with pleasure at the praise, making sounds that Zefix's translator kept trying to classify as subsonic frequencies capable of liquefying internal organs, which seemed medically incorrect, given that his organs remained distinctly solid. I need to repair this from the outside, Anya announced, heading for the exterior door. Come on, kids. Perimeter detail. Wait, you are taking them outside? Into the open? Zefix felt his panic rising to new and interesting levels. That is, the natural habitat of Razorbacks is extremely dangerous. There are larger predators, environmental hazards. You cannot just go wandering around out there with 3 cubs. Anya looked at him with the kind of patient expression usually reserved for explaining basic concepts to small children. Commander, I have been living here for 2 years. I go outside every single day. It is fine. It is statistically improbable to be fine, Zefix muttered, but followed her anyway because he was legally required to maintain visual contact with the illegal predators, and also because some small part of his brain wanted to see what would happen next. The same way people watched disaster documentaries. The exterior door opened, and Thornveld greeted them with its typical morning atmosphere, humid and thick with the scent of vegetation that was probably carnivorous. The sky was a pale orange, 3 moons still visible on the horizon, and the forest beyond the habitat's clearing was dense enough to hide approximately 1 million things that wanted to kill you. Anya stepped out confidently, toolbox in hand, walking toward the exterior wall where the stress fracture was located, and the cubs, the 3 juvenile Razorbacks, immediately deployed into formation. Zefix stopped walking. Just stopped, stared. Scout took point, positioning himself 5 meters ahead of Anya, head up, scanning the tree line. Brick moved to the left flank, maintaining a 45-degree angle. Pepper mirrored him on the right flank. All 3 were alert, focused, their bodies low and ready. It was a textbook defensive perimeter formation, the kind that Zefix had learned during his military service 30 years ago, the kind that required communication, coordination, and tactical awareness. Did you teach them that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anya looked up from her repair work, following his gaze to the cubs. Teach them what? Oh, the perimeter thing? No, they just started doing that on their own after a few weeks. Smart, right? I think they figured out I am kind of squishy compared to them, so they watch for threats. They just started doing it on their own, because they recognized their pack leader was vulnerable, and adapted their behavior accordingly, because that is what intelligent social predators do when they care about pack cohesion. Zefix's communicator chirped, and Lieutenant Krell's voice came through. Commander, this is Krell. I am approaching your position for backup as requested. ETA 2 minutes. Copy that, Krell. Be advised, the situation is unusual. How unusual are we talking, sir? You will see. Just do not make any sudden movements when you arrive. Zefix watched Anya work on the wall repair, applying sealant to the fracture with practiced efficiency. The cubs maintained their positions, occasionally glancing back at her to confirm she was safe, then returning to their scanning pattern. Brick's head suddenly snapped toward the eastern tree line. His body went rigid, a low rumble building in his chest. Scout and Pepper immediately shifted their attention to match his focus. Contact. East side. Anya said calmly, not even looking up from her work. Probably just a thorn deer. They come through here sometimes. A moment later, a creature that looked like someone had crossed a deer with a porcupine and given it anger management issues emerged from the trees. It saw the cubs, made a sound that was probably meant to be threatening, and then very wisely decided to go literally anywhere else. The cubs tracked its movement until it disappeared back into the forest, then resumed their scanning pattern. Lieutenant Krell chose that exact moment to come around the corner of the habitat, weapon drawn, ready for whatever unusual situation awaited him. He saw Anya, human, repairing a wall. He saw Commander Zephyx, standing very still, scanner out. He saw 3 juvenile Razorbacks in military formation providing security. Krell stopped walking, looked at the cubs, looked at Zephyx, looked back at the cubs. "Sir," he said slowly, "I am formally requesting emergency extraction for both of us." "Immediately." "Denied," Zephyx said. "If I have to witness this, so do you. Misery loves company." "That is not a real regulation, sir." "It is now. I am making it a regulation. Effective immediately." Anya finished her repair, stood up, and brushed off her hands. "All right, kids. Job well done. Let us head back inside. I think you 3 earned some enrichment time." The cubs broke formation instantly, bounding back to her like puppies. 70-pound armored puppies with retractable claws and bone plating. Krell watched them pass within 2 meters of his position, close enough to touch, close enough to kill him 17 different ways. And they completely ignored him in favor of following their human back inside. "Sir," Krill said quietly, "what exactly am I looking at right now?" "Proof that humans are going to get us all killed," Zephyx replied. "Just not in the way we expected." Enrichment time, as it turned out, involved Anya throwing a reinforced ball that the cubs chased with enough enthusiasm to leave small craters in her yard. Zephyx and Krell watched from what they had mutually agreed was a probably safe distance, which meant they were standing near the habitat door with a clear escape route. "This is insane," Krell muttered. "Is scanner recording everything?" Because their commanding officers were definitely going to accuse them of recreational drug use. "This violates every conservation protocol ever written. Every single one." "I checked." "I know," Zephyx said. "She is treating apex predators like pets." "I know, they are listening to her. Following commands. Playing fetch." "I know, Krell. I know." Pepper caught the ball mid-air with a leap that would have been impressive if it was not terrifying, landing with enough force to crack the ground beneath her. She pranced back to Anya with the ball in her jaws, tail wagging, clearly very proud of herself. "Good girl, Pepper. Excellent vertical tracking," Anya praised, taking the ball and preparing to throw it again. And that was when the forest moved. Not moved like wind through trees, moved like something massive was pushing through the undergrowth, with the kind of confidence that suggested it had no natural predators and knew it. The cubs stopped playing immediately. All 3 of them went stock still, heads turning in perfect unison toward the tree line, their earlier playfulness evaporating like water on a hot engine. Zephyx felt his stomach drop into his boots. He knew that behavior, that was threat detection behavior, that was something very bad is about to happen behavior. "Anya Barrett, we need to evacuate. Now," he said, already reaching for his communicator to call their ship. "Hold on," Anya said, shading her eyes and squinting at the forest. "Let me see what we are dealing with first." "There is no let me see, there is only running. Running is the correct response to aid. Oh, ancestors preserve us, is that a siege worm?" It was absolutely a siege worm, 20 feet of pure nightmare, covered in overlapping blade-like scales that gleamed in the morning light like polished obsidian. 6 legs, each ending in claws designed for digging through solid rock. A head that was mostly mouth, and a mouth that was mostly teeth. The kind of predator that evolution had clearly spent extra time on, adding features until someone said, "Okay, that is probably too much," and evolution said, "No, I am going to add more spikes." It emerged from the tree line with the casual confidence of something at the absolute top of the food chain, its serpentine body undulating as it moved, its eyes, all 4 of them, locked onto the habitat, onto Anya, onto the 3 cubs standing between them. Siege worms hunted Razorbacks. It was one of the few species that could. It was specifically evolved to counter their armor, their speed, their pack tactics. This was, in scientific terms, extremely bad. "Anya, we need to go right now," said urgently. Weapon coming up, though both of them knew that small arms fire would do exactly nothing to a siege worm except make it angry. "Relax," Anya said, and Zephyx was going to file a formal complaint about her definition of that word. "Watch." The siege worm advanced, closing the distance with terrifying speed. 50 meters, 40, 30. Scout chirped once, sharp and commanding. The cubs moved, not the playful tumbling from moments ago. not the gentle wrestling or the enthusiastic fetch playing. This was different. This was coordinated. This was tactical. Scout broke left, moving in a wide arc. Brick broke right, mirroring the pattern. Pepper, the smallest and fastest, shot straight forward, directly at the Wyrm. No, 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 they are going to get killed, Zephyx said, unable to look away from the impending disaster. But Pepper did not engage. She darted in close, within striking range, then veered off at the last second. The Wyrm's head snapped toward her, tracking her movement, committing to the target. And that was when Scout and Brick hit it from both flanks simultaneously. They did not try to pierce its armor. They went for the leg joints, the softer tissue between the scales, using their claws with surgical precision. The Wyrm shrieked, a sound that made Zephyx's antenna fold flat against his head, and turned to face the new threats. The moment it turned, Pepper was back, striking from behind, going for the same weak points. It was a military maneuver, a textbook flanking pattern. Draw attention, strike from the sides, rotate aggression, never let the enemy focus on a single target. She taught them that, Krell whispered, his voice filled with awe and horror in equal measure. She taught them pack tactics, actual military tactics. The siege Wyrm was powerful, heavily armored, and designed to hunt Razorbacks. But it was designed to hunt disorganized juvenile Razorbacks, panicked ones. Not 3 cubs who moved like a special operations unit, communicating through chirps and body language, adapting their strategy in real time. After 30 seconds of sustained harassment from 3 directions at once, the Wyrm made a decision. It decided that whatever meal these cubs might provide was not worth the effort. It turned, slowly, maintaining visual contact with all 3 cubs, and began retreating toward the forest. The cubs did not pursue. They held their positions, watching it go, until it disappeared completely into the trees. Then, and only then, did they break formation and bound back to Anya, all 3 talking at once in excited chirps and roars, climbing over each other to get her attention first. Yes, yes, I saw. You did so good. All of you. Textbook execution. Perfect communication. I am so proud, Anya said, pulling out a pouch of dried meat treats from her jacket pocket. She gave each cub several pieces, praising them individually. Scout, excellent command decisions. Brick, your timing was perfect. Pepper, outstanding bait and switch. You 3 are absolute professionals. The cubs were purring. All 3 of them. A sound that rumbled through the ground like distant thunder, that made the air vibrate, that every database in the galaxy said preceded Razorback feeding frenzies and violent territorial displays. But they were just happy, pleased with themselves, basking in their pack leader's approval like soldiers after a successful mission. Good babies. Anya cooed, scratching Brick behind his ear armor. Such good babies. Yes, you are. Zephyx's weapon hung forgotten in his hand. His scanner had captured everything, documented the impossible, recorded proof that humans did not tame dangerous animals through dominance or fear. They just befriended them, trained them, turned them into family. Krell, he said quietly. Yes, sir? When we file this report, we are going to be drug tested. I know, sir. Possibly institutionalized. Also likely, sir. It will be worth it to see Admiral Thex's face when he watches this footage. Agreed, sir. Completely worth it. But back inside the habitat, Zephyx finally found his voice, and what came out was roughly 47 questions compressed into a single run-on sentence that his translator gave up trying to parse halfway through. Anya held up a hand. Deep breath, Commander. You are going to hyperventilate, and I do not know Calarxian first aid. How are you? Alive. Zephyx managed, spacing each word out carefully like they might escape if he said them too quickly. That is not, you should not. Every biological model we have says this is impossible. Razorbacks cannot bond with other species. They are solitary except for mating pairs and maternal units. They attack anything that is not genetically recognized as pack. You are human. You are not a Razorback. Your DNA does not even have the same base pairs. How are you alive? Anya settled into her chair, gesturing for him and Krell to sit as well. The cubs sprawled around her feet in various states of relaxation. Pepper was chewing on what appeared to be a reinforced toy that had seen significant action. Okay. So back on Earth, I was Colonial Marines for 8 years. Worked with military dogs mostly. Shepherds, Malinois, a couple of really intense Dobermans. And the thing about working dogs is, they are not pets, they are partners, colleagues. You do not own them, you work with them. She reached down and scratched Scout's head absently, and he leaned into it with obvious contentment. When I found these three, yeah, I knew what they were. I had read the files, apex predators, extremely dangerous, all that. But they were also babies who had just watched their mother die. They were scared and alone, and making these sounds that look, I do not care what species you are. The sound of a baby crying for its dead parent is universal. Zephyx wanted to argue with that, wanted to point out that Razorbacks did not have the neural capacity for complex emotional processing, but his scanner had been recording their behavior all morning, and the data was problematic for that theory. So I did what I knew. Respect, clear communication, consistent routine, genuine affection. I never tried to dominate them or show them I was scared, even when I was absolutely terrified, which was, the entire first month. I just treated them like people, like individuals with their own personalities and needs. You treated apex predators like people, Krell repeated slowly, as if saying it out loud might make it make sense. It did not. Well, yeah, because they are people. Just people with claws and armor plating and subsonic communication frequencies. Brick, who had been dozing, suddenly stood up and padded out of the room. Zephyx tensed immediately, hand going to his weapon. But Anya just watched calmly. He is fine. Probably heard something outside. They are very thorough about security. A minute later Brick returned, carrying something in his jaws. Something small and furry and very dead. He walked directly to Zephyx and dropped it at his feet with a wet thump. Zephyx stared down at the dead swamp rat, partially chewed, leaking fluids onto the floor. Stared up at Brick, who was sitting politely, tail wagging slightly, looking hopeful. Why did he? What is happening right now? Zephyx asked. Anya grinned, looking genuinely delighted. Oh, that is so sweet. He brought you a gift. He is trying to include you in the pack. I do not want to be in the pack. I want to file my report and transfer to a desk job in a sector with no humans and no predators and no situations that require therapy. Too late. You have been adopted. Congratulations. Scout and Pepper, sensing something important was happening, got up and came over to inspect the situation. Scout sniffed the dead rat, then looked at Zephyx, then chirped approvingly. Pepper head-butted Zephyx's leg gently, nearly knocking him over despite the gentle part. What are they doing? Krell asked, backing away slowly. Morning report, Anya explained, standing up and walking over. This is what they did earlier with me. They are showing what they found, what they protected against. They are asking if they did good. She crouched down to the cub's level and they immediately focused on her with absolute attention. All right, team. Let us review your performance. Scout, your command decisions during the Wyrm encounter were excellent. You identified the threat, assessed our capabilities, and adapted the standard flanking pattern to account for size differential. A+ tactical awareness. Scout's entire body wiggled with pride. Brick, your timing on the secondary strike was perfect. You waited until the target was fully committed before engaging, which maximized impact and minimized your exposure. Textbook execution. Brick made a rumbling sound that was probably meant to be humble but came across as deeply pleased with himself. Pepper. Outstanding work as primary distraction. You maintained optimal distance, drew aggression effectively, and disengaged the moment your team was in position. That took serious courage and excellent spatial awareness. Pepper practically vibrated with joy, making a series of chirps that Zephyx's translator labeled as happy vocalizations, which seemed like a significant understatement. However, Anya continued, her tone shifting slightly. We need to work on your post-engagement discipline. You three broke formation before confirming the threat had fully retreated. That could be dangerous if the target decided to return. Next time, maintain position until I give the all-clear signal. Understood. All three cubs chirped in acknowledgement. Attentive and serious. Good. Dismissed. Go rest. You earned it. The cubs dispersed, returning to their various lounging positions around the room. Brick paused to look back at the dead rat he had brought Zephyx, then at Zephyx himself, with an expression that clearly asked, "Did I do good?" He wants feedback, Anya said helpfully. You should probably say something nice. He worked hard on that gift. Zephyx looked at the partially chewed swamp rat, looked at Brick waiting patiently for approval, looked at Krell, who offered exactly zero assistance, and had pulled out his own scanner to record this for posterity. "That is, you did. Good job on the rat," Zephyx said awkwardly. "Very dead. Excellent. Hunting." Brick's tail wagged faster. He made a pleased chirp and trotted off to join his siblings. "There you go," Anya said, patting Zephyx on the shoulder in a way that suggested she did not fully appreciate how close he was to a complete psychological breakdown. "You are a natural." Zephyx watched the three cubs settle down for a post-mission nap, piling on top of each other in a heap of claws and armor and contentment. Watched Anya return to her chair with the casual ease of someone who had not just conducted a military debriefing with apex predators. "This is going in my report," he said quietly. "I assumed it would. No one will believe it. Probably not. I have video evidence and they still will not believe it." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Anya agreed cheerfully. "Want some coffee?" "You look like you need coffee." Zephyx did need coffee. He needed so much coffee, possibly intravenously. 3 hours later, Zephyx sat in his ship's command center, staring at the report he had spent the last 2 hours writing, rewriting, and then rewriting again, because it kept sounding like fiction regardless of how he phrased it. Lieutenant Krell sat next to him, reviewing his own notes, occasionally making sounds that suggested he was having a similar crisis of confidence in objective reality. "Do we mention the part where she called them good babies after they fought off a siege worm? It is in the video footage. We cannot hide it. Admiral Thex is going to have us both evaluated for substance abuse." "I know," Zephyx said tiredly. "I am making peace with it." He hit the transmit button, sending the report in approximately 4 hours of video documentation directly to Galactic Wildlife Conservation Fleet headquarters. Then he sat back and waited for the inevitable response. It took 12 minutes. Admiral Thex's face appeared on the view screen, and his expression suggested he had already watched at least some of the footage. His scales had shifted to the pale gray color that indicated extreme stress, and his crest was fully flattened against his head. "Commander Zephyx," the Axe said slowly, "I have been in this position for 23 years. I have reviewed reports of illegal smuggling operations, black market genetic engineering, unauthorized terraforming, and one memorable incident involving a cargo ship full of explosive fungi. This report, what you have sent me, I do not have words, sir. I assure you every piece of documentation is accurate. We ran diagnostics on our scanners 3 times. The footage is unaltered. What you are seeing is exactly what we witnessed." The message was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on something off-screen, probably the video of Anya conducting a tactical debriefing with 3 Razorback cubs who were enthusiastically participating. "She treated them like military working dogs," the Kex said finally. "Yes, sir. She established pack hierarchy through respect and consistent routine rather than dominance or fear." "Yes, sir. She taught apex predators to execute coordinated military maneuvers through what she described as play fighting." "Yes, sir. And they brought you a dead rat as a gift because they wanted to include you in their social structure." "Yes, sir. It was very thoughtful of them, sir." Tex made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been the beginning of a nervous breakdown, hard to tell. "Commander, I am looking at footage of a human woman sleeping peacefully while surrounded by 3 creatures that are classified as Class 5 extinction-level threats. I am watching them bring her equipment with jaws that can crush starship plating. I am seeing them execute defensive formations that I learned in Advanced Military Academy. And she calls them good babies." "That is an accurate summary, sir." Thex was quiet for another moment, then he pulled up something on his own console, typing rapidly. "I am updating the official protocols for human interaction with dangerous xenofauna," he said. "New directive reads as follows. If human colonists wish to adopt, befriend or otherwise cohabitate with lethal predators, conservation officers are to document the situation and leave them alone. Do not attempt intervention unless the human specifically requests assistance. Do not attempt to remove the animals. Do not attempt to explain why this is a bad idea. Just let them do their thing." "Sir, that seems unorthodox." "Commander, humans are officially the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and it has nothing to do with their weapons or their military capabilities. It is because they can apparently make family members out of anything with a nervous system. They befriend apex predators with sincerity, actual sincerity. They form genuine emotional bonds with creatures that should be eating them. And somehow it works." Thex pulled up another piece of footage. The one where Pepper had brought Anya the ball tail wagging, clearly playing fetch. This should not be possible, CX continued. Every model we have of Razorback behavior says this cannot happen. But it did happen. It is happening right now. And if we try to stop it, if we try to separate those cubs from that human, we are going to have 3 extremely upset Razorbacks who have been trained in military tactics by an ex-Colonial Marine. That is not a situation I want anyone to handle. Understood, sir. The Barrett woman can keep her cubs. No permit required, no fees, no inspections, unless she requests them. We are updating her file to indicate that she is, how do I phrase this, demonstrating successful xenofauna integration, and leaving it at that. What about the arrest warrant, sir? What arrest warrant? I do not see any arrest warrant. Do you see an arrest warrant, Commander? No, sir. I do not see any arrest warrant. Excellent. Glad we are in agreement. Now, is there anything else you need to report, or can I go have the strongest drink available in this sector? Just one thing, sir. Permission to request a transfer. Denied. You are now our human liaison specialist. Congratulations on your promotion. Sir, I do not want to be a human liaison specialist. Neither do I, Zephyx. Neither do I. But here we are. X out. The view screen went dark. Krell looked at Zephyx. Zephyx looked at Krell. Human liaison specialist, Krell said. Do not start. You have been promoted. I will transfer you to waste reclamation duty. You cannot do that, sir. You need me. I am your second-in-command human liaison specialist assistant. I hate you, Krell. Understood, sir. Shall I file that officially? Back on Thornveld. Night had fallen and Anya was going through her evening routine. Teeth brushed, hair secured in a braid that would inevitably come loose during the night, sleep clothes that had more holes than fabric but were comfortable, so she kept wearing them. The cubs were already in the bedroom, having completed their evening perimeter check, dinner and post-dinner wrestling match that had somehow not destroyed any furniture this time. Anya climbed into bed, and immediately, all 3 cubs tried to fit onto her pillow simultaneously. They were each roughly 90 pounds now, significantly larger than when she had found them, with armor plating that had thickened and hardened into proper defensive coverage. They were absolutely too big to share a pillow. They had been too big for weeks. No one had informed them of this fact. Guys, seriously, there is a whole bed. You do not all need to be on my pillow, Anya said, trying to reclaim at least a portion of her sleeping space. Scout responded by carefully placing his head on her shoulder and making a rumbling sound that was probably meant to be subtle but shook the entire mattress. Brick settled against her back, creating a wall of armored warmth. Pepper wedged herself into the remaining space, somehow defying physics to fit. Okay, fine. Evening report time. What did we accomplish today? Anya asked, because she had learned that skipping the evening report resulted in restless cubs who would wake her up at 3 in the morning to try again. Scout chirped first, a series of vocalizations that Anya had learned to interpret. Perimeter secure, no threats detected after the Wyrm incident, eastern fence needs maintenance. Good catch on the fence. We will fix that tomorrow. Brick rumbled his report. Food stores adequate. Water filtration system operating normally. Small rodent breach in storage area. Breach has been handled. Thank you for handling the rodent situation. Very professional. Pepper? Pepper's report was delivered with her usual enthusiasm. 3 potential threats identified and monitored. All remained at safe distance. No engagement required. Evening patrol completed successfully. Excellent work, all of you. A+ security operations. You 3 are the best team I could ask for. All 3 cubs made please sounds, settling more firmly into their positions, which should not have been physically possible given the limited space available. Anya reached up and patted whatever cub was closest. She had lost track of who was where and closed her eyes. Outside, something howled in the distance. Something large and probably hungry. Inside, 3 Razorback cubs, each capable of tearing through starship hulls, each trained by an ex-Colonial Marine, each absolutely convinced they were still small enough for pillow time, adjusted their positions slightly. Alert. Ready. Protective. Anya was asleep within minutes, completely unaware that she was being guarded by creatures that most of the galaxy considered nightmares. Somewhere in orbit, Commander Zephyx was making his final log entry of the day. Personal log. Commander Zephyx, Galactic Wildlife Conservation Fleet. Today I witnessed a human woman conducting military operations with apex predators. I was adopted into a Razorback pack via gifted rodent. I was promoted against my will. Humanity remains completely unexplainable. Their ability to form emotional bonds with lethal fauna appears to have no logical limits. Recommend extreme caution when dealing with human colonists. Also recommend therapy for any officers assigned to human sectors. Requesting transfer to literally any other sector, preferably one without humans, or predators, or situations that challenge my understanding of biology. Request denied. Apparently I am now a human liaison specialist. End log. He closed the file, looked at the bottle of Calaxian whiskey he had been saving for special occasions, and decided that this qualified. On Thornveld, Anya slept peacefully, surrounded by family. The end.